Hi everyone, welcome to today's One Card Wonder Wednesday for February 20th, 2019. Today I'm going to make a cute little card using the beautiful Promenade set. I don't know if you have this set or if you've seen it in the catalog, but it is one of my favorite sets. I love this flower and I feel this flower is gorgeous for coloring, so that's exactly what I did for today's card. I'm going to also use the Well Said stamp set, which is this one that I've used several times that has lots of the sayings and little sentiments in it, and the hardwood stamp, which that will be one of the first steps that we do in this card, but I will hold off and show you the card before I get started. This is the card I'm making today. What do you think? I think it's gorgeous. I love these colors together, and it's just simple, but I just think it's cute. All right, I'm gonna set this aside, and I'm gonna start with the very first thing that I want to do is show you how to get that dotted background using the, as soon as I find my Highland Heather ink, using the Highland Heather ink and the aqua painter. And I like to put another piece of paper down just so I don't get too much splatter everywhere. And right now, of course, my screen is over here and I just don't want to get any splatter on it. So then I'm just going to take my aqua brush after you opened up your Highland Heather ink and you've squished it and you have a little bit of the ink there. Just get it wet and just run your brush around in it. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be perfect. You can do it as dark or as light as you want. But then I'm just going to hold my finger here and I'm just going to tap. And now it's starting to come off. I didn't use as much, didn't squish as much water out because I didn't want it to splatter too far. But as you see, once you tap your finger like that, you'll get that gorgeous little splattered background. And you can do this with any of the ink colors, but of course for this card, since those are one of the colors that I'm using, I chose to use it. Okay, now the second step is I'm going to take this hardwood stamp, and I like to leave it right in the case. You can put it on one of the larger blocks if you want to, but I just leave it right in the case. And then I'm going to use the soft suede ink, and I'm just going to ink up a little bit of it. It doesn't have to be completely inked up because all I want to get is a circle with the starburst punch out of it. And I just have a small piece, little scrap of Whisper White, and I'm just going to lay that on there and just kind of rub it with your hand, and then you can use your paper piercer or take your pick tool to pick it up, and then you just have that awesome little piece there that we're going to stamp cut out from. So then I just take a piece of my chamois, which I just cut mine in half because it fits really great in one of the half wide cases. And then you could just use half, oops, knock stuff over, use half of one. And then I just pick it up and just wipe that clean and close it back up. And you never have to take it out of the case if you're just doing things like that. Now, if you're doing a bunch of images and you want to just stamp, 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 then you would obviously take it out and put it on one of the large blocks. Now that I have that, go ahead and grab the Starburst punch and just punch this out. I love being able to use that hardwood stamp to make a separate little background piece. And I'll just save this little piece because I can use some smaller circles and cut it out to use it for other cards. Since I've already stamped it, I might as well use it for something. So what I want to do next is just start some of the layering that's going to be going on in this card. And I'll grab the Whisper White card base. And I've got a piece of soft suede that is 5 1/4 by 4. And I'm going to lay this piece down first because that's just going to be that very background base. And then on top of that, we'll do the Highland Heather, which is 5 1/8 by 3 7/8. As I just like to go down by, sometimes when I'm layering like this, multiple layers, by 1/8 of an inch in size, just so you have just a little bit of that other color peeking out behind. So you can see the soft suede here, but you've got the Highland Heather, and then our Whisper White with the Highland Heather speckles will go right on top. Just again, just go around the edges with your snail adhesive or whatever adhesive that you're using. And then layer this right on top of that. Perfect. Once you have that, we're going to stamp some of these leaves that come in the Petal Promenade set. And I want to just lay this on here so I know about where it's going to be. I'm not going to leave it there while I'm stamping, but it's just going to be there to guide me a little bit just before I put the stamp down. Now I used Mossy Meadow, and I made sure this stamp was well inked, and then I just stamped off one time because I didn't want it quite that dark. And now I'm just going to lay my stamp here after I've moved that circle from there, and then it kind of gives me an idea of where I'm at. And I'm going to do the same. I'm going to stamp off again, and I'm going to put this one more toward the top. I'm going to stamp once, and then I'm going to stamp twice just so I have two of those on the top. And then once we start layering, see how that perfectly goes in between those leaves, and it just gives it just a little bit of extra depth. The next thing I did was, I need to move my Highland Heather ink before I stick my arm in it here. Let me just wipe this case out a little bit. I just don't want that water getting mixed in with the ink, so you always want to wipe that out after you've used your aqua pen in there. The next thing I want to do is just take this Mossy Meadow blend. This is the light one. See, I've labeled mine because they were so hard for me to read when I just have them sitting on the desk, and especially when I'm doing a video and trying to pull them up, it's kind of hard to read sometimes with the smaller print, and I just wanted to make sure I don't have as many delays when I'm trying to tell you what I'm talking about. So I'm just going to color. I just colored in all of the leaves, and then I did a little bit on the stems over here just because they were a little bit lighter. But that's because I stamped once, stamped again, and stamped for the third time. But even after the third time, you can still see, because Mossy Meadow is a darker color, that you still get a pretty good leaf outline on your paper. We'll go ahead and get some dimensionals for the back of our starburst punched hardwood paper here. And I just put 3 on there, and this will be the next piece that we add to the card. And then we'll just set that right on there. So now I took a piece of Whisper White, and I used the well-written framelits, and I used this beautiful leaf framelit to cut out these really pretty, I guess you'd call them leaf stalks. I don't know what else to call them. They're stalks with leaves on them, so I'll just call them a leaf stalk. And I took some Tombow liquid glue, and I know I want this side to be glued down, so I just take a little bit and go on here. Now, I'm going to be buying some of our adhesive sheets soon and showing you how to use those, because sometimes liquid glue can be a little bit messy, and the adhesive sheets work really well for projects like this, especially if you've got a thinlet that has an intricate pattern to it, such as these leaves. So with those little leaves on the side, our next step is going to be doing the flower that goes on the front. Now, the flower is one of my favorite parts of this card. It's kind of the showpiece, basically. And I used Memento ink, and I just inked up this gorgeous flower that comes in the Petal Promenade. Make sure you've got it good and inked, because you want to make sure that background really shows. Go ahead and stamp that down. And I used my blends to color this. And I used, actually I didn't use my Calypso Coral like I thought I was going to. So I started out using the Blackberry Bliss Light, and I took that and I just took the marker tip of it and just went around all the edges of this flower. And I tried to do more around these thick black edges of the petals, that's just going to be just a little bit of a highlight on these flowers once the whole flower is colored in. And then I took the Highland Heather Dark and did the same. I used the marker tip and just went around that Blackberry Bliss that I just did. And what I like about the blends is, I mean, these are two different colors, but you can put them together and you don't get one color onto the other marker. So I started with the darker Blackberry Bliss, and even though I went over it with the Highland Heather Dark, which is a lighter color, that color didn't transfer to my marker, which is fantastic. So now the Highland Heather Light, I'm going to use the marker tip, and I'm going to do the entire flower with this. And I'm going to especially pay attention going over where I drew those outlines, just to kind of blend them in a little bit. Get the colors to soften up just a little bit, but there's still a nice discrepancy between the Highland Heather Light and the dark and the Blackberry Bliss color. But it just gives it that really gorgeous outline. As you can see, it just gives it a little bit of depth like a real flower. The next thing I did was I took the Cajun Craze Light with the marker tip, and I just went over all of these stamen lines that are here in the center, and then all the dots I went ahead and just kind of dotted them too, just to make sure they are colored in, because you know, when you see a flower, everything doesn't look black like how I stamped it in the memento, but you just want that just to show up a little bit on the flower. Ooh, if I can pick it up. So here's the finished flower. I think it turned out really cute, and I'm not going to spend the time cutting that out. I already have one cut out to use for the card, but I wanted to show you how I achieved that color. And see, even once it's all the way dry, it even looks a little bit brighter, those edges that we blended together. So now I need a couple of more dimensionals, and this was something, these are the only adhesive that hold that flower on, is this one small mini dimensional right here that we just slide under here and take that off, and then you can see that piece of the white, oh, now my brain went blank again, my white die cut piece there sticks to that as well. And I just figured this corner little piece will have it stick, and that way this part of the flower can kind of curve up a little bit. So I just kind of played with it with my hands and just curved it up a little bit. And there, see how that gives it that just a little bit of dimension by curving the edges up. Now I'm going to use the Highland Heather again, the ink, and I just have a small piece of, or I did have a small piece of Whisper White. Here it is. And we're just going to stamp the For You in the Highland Heather. And then that will just get cut out, so it doesn't have to be perfect on your little piece of paper. For some reason, I'm really enjoying doing these little cutout words like this lately. I think it just looks really cute on a card, just something different. And so I basically just cut around everything, basically not leaving much of a border at all. But you have just that little piece, and flip that over and add a couple of mini dimensionals to the back of that. It's literally just wide enough for the mini dimensionals to fit. So that gives you an idea of how skinny it is. But I put 2 on there. And then when I use the well-written dies, I cut out the word friend in Highland Heather. And I cut out these tiny little birds in Whisper White. Or bird, there's only one bird. But I'm going to go ahead and use a little bit of the Tombow glue again, and it's just going to be on the F, the R, and the I. I try not to squeeze this too fast, just because I don't want it to just, a big puddle of it to come out. That over, and we're going to stick that right onto this piece here. Just get it to lay flat. I'm just going to set that For You stamp on there just to hold it down for a second. And then on the edge of my piece of dimensionals, these mini dimensionals, I'm just going to cut a tiny little strip, and this is like almost as skinny as my paper piercing tool. It might actually be a little bit thinner. Take that backing off, And because I want this friend to be standing up and I don't want it to end up falling off, I'm just going to stick that right underneath the edge of the D and stick that down. And because I cut it so skinny, you can't even see that it's there. Take the backing off from this little For You piece. And I'm going to stand up so I can make sure I get this straight on here. I'm just going to put that right there. And I will take this tiny little bird and I'm going to give him a little dimensional on the back as well. And then I'm going to stick it right at the top of this For You, so it almost looks like he's just sitting on that little piece of paper. And there you have it. That is today's One Card Wonder Wednesday. I thought this was a pretty fast little card to do. The thing that took the longest was actually coloring in the flower and cutting it out. So if you didn't want to have to spend the time coloring it in, you could use this gorgeous stamp here that will fill in the colors, and you could have used just Highland Heather or any color really. It just depends on what color you wanted to use. But if you wanted to go with this color scheme, you could just use the regular Highland Heather ink pad and fill that in. You can't color on your stamps with the blends markers because they're alcohol and it will dry out the photopolymer and the rubber stamps. So just be careful of that. Don't do that. But you can always use one of the Stampin' Right markers, which have the regular ink in them, not the alcohol ink, and you can color on them with that if you like as well. But anyway, thank you for joining me today for One Card Wonder Wednesday. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you back here next week to watch again. Thanks. Bye.